Hello students, in my last class I had discussed the classification of drugs which we call as the mood stabilizers, and I had discussed the mechanisms of action of lithium, valproate and carbamazepine as far as the mood stabilizing action was concerned. And today I'll be talking about the adverse effects of lithium, and I'll be talking about the drugs, anticonvulsant drugs like valproate and carbamazepine and lamotrigine in relation to their mood stabilizing action. So lithium, as I said yesterday, was a very important discovery as a mood stabilizer and is widely used. And the major importance of lithium is that it is effective in the manic phase, it is effective for prophylaxis, and it is also effective in the depressive phase of bipolar illness. However, there are certain disadvantages to the use of lithium. For example, it requires therapeutic drug monitoring, and these are some very significant adverse effects which are observed with the use of lithium. So first are the CNS adverse effects, where the patients usually show a very fine postural hand tremor. This hand tremor is very difficult to differentiate from essential tremor. It is dose dependent and is seen in roughly 15 to 70% of the patients who are given lithium. Another thing about this adverse effect is that it is additive. For example, if the patient is also receiving valproate, and if the patient is also receiving antipsychotic drugs, then the hand tremors become extremely significant, because all these three drugs will produce a additive effect on hand tremor. So the treatment of his hand tremor is dose reduction and the use of beta adrenergic blockers. This is similar to the treatment of valproate induced tremors. So the treatment of lithium induced tremors and valproate induced tremors are the same. But if you remember, in the case of tremors which are induced by antipsychotic drugs, the treatment is not beta blockers, the treatment is centrally acting anticholinergic drugs. So this is a point in difference as far as the treatment of tremors induced by antipsychotics and the treatment of tremors induced by lithium and valproate. Now at peak plasma levels, usually if lithium is dosed as a single daily dose, then we prefer to give this dose of lithium at bedtime, so that when peak plasma levels take place, the patient is sleeping. So the peak plasma levels are usually associated with effects like motor incoordination, ataxia and slurred speech. Another adverse effect which is not so common but has been reported is the occurrence of seizures. The seizures have been reported with the use of lithium, and also it has been observed that there is an increased risk of post electroconvulsive therapy confusion or post ECT confusion. So generally in a patient where one plans to give electroconvulsive therapy, lithium is usually tapered before that, and then this treatment is done, because the risk of confusion after this therapy is enhanced if the patient is on lithium. Another common adverse effect which is seen with lithium, which is seen with valproate, and which is observed with almost all antipsychotics is weight gain. The mechanism of weight gain which occurs with lithium, valproate and antipsychotics is believed to be similar, which is because of the stimulation of the appetite centers in the hypothalamus. So generally with lithium, there is a weight increase in the range of 1 kg to 4 kgs, which may be seen at the end of few months of therapy. And usually it is said that this weight change is roughly an increase of 5% of the baseline weight. and which may be seen in as many as 15 to 70% of patients who are treated with lithium. So the weight gain is significant. Similarly, sedation is also a common adverse effect of compounds like lithium, valproate and antipsychotics. So if these drugs are given in combination, and also sometimes benzodiazepines are given in combination with these drugs for taking care of anxiety, for taking care of agitation, so the sedation becomes very pronounced because it becomes additive because of the use of all these different types of drugs. And all of these effects, that is the hand tremors, the weight gain and sedation, all of them are take place at therapeutic doses of these drugs. Okay, coming to the next adverse effect, that is the renal effects. The renal effects with the use of lithium are also very marked, and any patient who has been on lithium for a few months or years shows significant renal effects with the use of lithium. So we have polyuria, where you can see that there may be a urine output as much as 3 liters per day in these patients who have been receiving lithium long term. And polyuria is usually associated with compensatory polydipsia. And the mechanism which is responsible for this polyuria is that, you know, in the distal tubular cells of the kidney, in the apical or the luminal membrane, there is a calcium channel which is known as the epithelial sodium ion channel, or it is written in short as ENaC, ENaC. So these epithelial sodium ion channels, which are present on the luminal surface of the epithelial cells in the distal tubules, lithium has roughly 1.5 to 2 times the affinity for these channels as compared to sodium. So a greater amount of lithium enters these distal tubular cells as compared to sodium, and a high intracellular lithium ion concentration is believed to produce an inhibitory effect on a protein kinase which is known as GSK3 beta. If you remember, I had mentioned this protein kinase also in relation to the mechanism of action of lithium and valproate. So this GSK3 beta is inhibited as a result of increased intracellular concentrations of lithium. Lithium is not a substrate for the sodium potassium ATPase, which is present on the basement membrane of these epithelial cells. So you have increased concentration of lithium inside the tubular cells, and this has an inhibitory effect on this protein kinase, glycogen synthase kinase 3 beta, and this inhibitory effect is associated with a down regulation of aquaporin 2 channels and the induction of nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. So this is the mechanism for the polyuria which takes place with long-term use of lithium. So the patient and as well as the physician, they should be aware and they should be on the lookout for this adverse effect of lithium, and things which can be done to reduce the incidence of this adverse effect is: number one, the patient should be well hydrated. The patient should be put on the minimal dose of lithium possible, and it should be preferably a single dose of lithium given at bedtime. Now this nephrogenic diabetes insipidus is usually insensitive to vasopressin, but it is sensitive to amiloride. So that can be used as a treatment option. So this was about the polyuria which is observed with the action of lithium, where the kidneys lose their urine concentrating ability. Then there are certain endocrine effects also which may be observed with the use of lithium. For example, effects may be seen on the thyroid gland, where it has been observed say roughly in about 10 to 15% of the patients, there might be a benign diffuse non-tender thyroid enlargement, but the patient may be euthyroid. Even though there is an increase in the size of the thyroid gland, the patient is mostly euthyroid, though roughly in 5% of the patients, the patient may develop overt hypothyroidism. Now, if a patient on lithium develops hypothyroidism, it is usually very easy to treat. The patient may be put on T4 therapy, and that is how this hypothyroidism may be managed. Very rarely there could be hyperthyroidism, or there might be an increase in the calcium ion concentrations. You may have hypercalcemia as a result of hyperparathyroidism in these patients. So generally, as I spoke earlier in the general pharmacology of lithium, that a patient put on lithium requires therapeutic drug monitoring, where regular monitoring of serum lithium levels is required. Similarly, these patients would also require monitoring of their renal function, where serum creatinine levels, the blood urea nitrogen levels, serum calcium levels, the TSH levels and the T4 levels and the serum calcium levels should be monitored at regular intervals. Then as far as ECG changes are concerned, these also generally take place when the patient has been on long-term lithium therapy, where the most common effect is a benign reversible T-wave flattening, which is observed in roughly 20% of the patients. And if there is a overdosage with lithium, then it can lead to certain cardiovascular effects like sinus bradycardia. It could lead to AV block and could possibly compromise cardiovascular function. So these are the endocrine effects, the renal effects, and the ECG effects which may take place with the use of lithium. Then there are certain changes which may be observed in the skin. There are certain allergic reactions. I'll talk about these, mention these event toxicity reactions also, toxic effects of lithium. Then there are certain skin conditions. For example, there could be a worsening of acne, and there could be a worsening of psoriasis. Now normally these two conditions may be very well managed by the topical use of dermatological preparations which are used in the treatment of these disorders, and very rarely, in a very few % of patients who are on lithium, you might require to discontinue lithium for improvement in these conditions, because otherwise normally they can be managed with the use of topical medication primarily directed for acne and psoriasis. Then very rarely there could be alopecia, that is baldness, which may be seen with lithium, or hair fall may occur with lithium, and this adverse effect also may transiently occur with the use of valproate. So these were the skin effects. Then as far as pregnancy and lactation is concerned, there is one peculiar malformation or anomaly which is known as Epstein malformation, where the tricuspid valve may be malformed, or it is an abnormality in the formation of the tricuspid valve. The incidence is roughly 1 in 250 births. So serum lithium should be monitored very carefully, and if there is an option of discontinuing lithium, then that could be done. But sometimes in certain patients there is a risk of predisposition to mania because of discontinuation of lithium. So in these patients, because of the risk of mania, there are certain antipsychotics, especially mentioning antipsychotics like olanzapine, antipsychotics like risperidone, and an antipsychotic like quetiapine. Till date, no malformations have been reported in clinical studies with the use of these three antipsychotics, and in those patients where there is a very high risk of mania taking place because of discontinuation of lithium, these three antipsychotics may be given in place of lithium. Then generally lithium is supposed to be discontinued. In those patients where we continue with lithium during pregnancy, lithium should be discontinued 24 to 48 hours prior to delivery. The reason for this is that normally there is diuresis which is associated with the postpartum phase, and this diuresis may or at the time of delivery there is diuresis, and this diuresis will be associated with the increase in the lithium ions concentration. So increased lithium ion concentrations may lead to neonatal goiter, it can lead to CNS depression, it can lead to hypotonia, it can lead to a condition known as floppy baby syndrome. So generally lithium should be discontinued 24 to 48 hours prior to delivery. Now there are some other adverse effects. For example, a benign sustained increase in the polymorphonuclear leukocytes has been observed where the count may be as high as 12,000 to 15,000 cells per millimeter cube. So these are the common adverse effects, where most prominent are the adverse effects pertaining to the CNS, pertaining to the kidneys, pertaining to the cardiovascular system, pertaining to pregnancy. In lactation, if you remember, I had mentioned in general pharmacokinetics, the concentration of lithium in breast milk is roughly 20% of the plasma concentration and does not generally produce a behavioral change in the infant. Okay. Now speaking about lithium toxicity, the lithium toxicity can vary in severity from mild, moderate, severe. It can be so mild that nothing might be required to be done. It might be so severe that the patient may end up with seizures, coma, and death. So the signs and symptoms of toxicity in the patient should always be looked out by the physician and should also be informed to the patient. So generally, when the toxicity is mild, you have symptoms like apathy, irritability, sedation, muscle weakness, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, diarrhea, and a fine tremor. Usually we say it is mild if the serum concentrations are less than 1.6 or they are up to 1.6 milliequivalent per liter. Then this can progress to a moderate form of toxicity where you can have symptoms like a blurred vision, you can have confusion, you can have drowsiness. From a fine tremor, it may progress to a coarse or a gross tremor. There could be slurred speech, there could be ataxia, there could be hyperreflexia. This moderate form of toxicity takes place say up to 2.5 millimoles per liter. Then when the concentration goes above 2.5 millimoles or milliequivalent per liter, we say that there is severe toxicity. It can lead to cardiovascular collapse, it can lead to coma, it can lead to seizures, it can lead to death. Now generally discontinuation of lithium should be the first step and in the treatment of this toxicity. And the other measure, there is no specific antidote which we have to take care of lithium toxicity. So there is no specific antidote and the treatment is primarily supportive. So in the supportive treatment or supportive care, you need to monitor the cardiovascular function. Electrolytes have to be monitored. Rehydration and replenishment of electrolytes is extremely important. And as if you remember, I had mentioned that a depletion in sodium promotes lithium retention. So sodium chloride or sodium bicarbonate infusion forms the baseline or the basic treatment. Then hemodialysis is very effective for removing or for the clearance of lithium, and usually when the levels are more than 3 milliequivalent per liter, hemodialysis is advised. Now it is generally said that the signs and symptoms of lithium toxicity are reversible, but very rarely if the serum concentrations of lithium have been greater than 3 milliequivalent per liter for a considerable period of time, some amount of neurotoxicity or motor toxicity may be irreversible. So that is associated with high serum levels of lithium. And generally, if a patient dies because of toxicity, it has been observed that death normally takes place over levels which are more than 4 milliequivalent per liter. So to just revise, no specific antidote, supportive treatment, replenish electrolytes like sodium chloride. Sodium has to be replenished, so you give it in the form of sodium chloride or sodium bicarbonate, and hemodialysis may aid the clearance of lithium. So apart from this, there is nothing other major thing you can do for the management of lithium toxicity. As far as drug interactions are concerned, there are numerous drug interactions which can take place with lithium. The prominent ones are with diuretics, because diuretics will promote retention. Then ACE inhibitors are supposed to promote retention of lithium. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs apart from aspirin and acetaminophen also predispose to retention of lithium. Dietary sodium, soda, coffee, tea, caffeine which is there in coffee promote lithium clearance, and in acute mania also there is an increase in lithium clearance. There is one very important pharmacodynamic drug interaction which I mentioned earlier, that if lithium is combined with valproate and if lithium is combined with antipsychotics, then the extrapyramidal effects which are seen with antipsychotic treatment, they become enhanced with the use of lithium. The incidence of tremor and rigidity is increased along with antipsychotic drugs. Sedation is increased along with valproate and antipsychotic drugs. So those are the pharmacodynamic interactions which have been observed with lithium. Okay, coming to the use of lithium, if you remember, I had mentioned that lithium was the first compound which was effective in the manic phase of bipolar disease, which was not a anticonvulsant and which was not a antipsychotic. So lithium, the good point about lithium is that it is effective in the manic phase, it is effective for prophylaxis, and it is effective for bipolar depression. And it can be given very easily. You can combine, if the patient is not well controlled on lithium alone, you can very easily combine lithium with valproate, with antipsychotic and with benzodiazepines without any problem. So lithium can be easily combined along with valproate, along with an anticonvulsant like carbamazepine or lamotrigine, and it can be combined with an antipsychotic like an atypical antipsychotic or a typical antipsychotic like haloperidol or chlorpromazine, and it can be combined with benzodiazepines. One thing about lithium which is a drawback as compared to valproate is that, and especially that is one major reason when a patient comes with very acute and severe form of mania, giving lithium monotherapy, though lithium is effective against mania, is not advisable, because the onset of action with lithium is roughly 2 weeks or more than 2 weeks, and that is why it becomes very important to combine lithium with valproate with a antipsychotic and a benzodiazepine. And then when the full effects of lithium take over, you can gradually discontinue the use of antipsychotic, and you can also discontinue the use of valproate if it has been combined with lithium, and then the patient may be put on long-term maintenance therapy on lithium in combination with a benzodiazepine. So that is generally how lithium is used in the treatment of the manic phase of bipolar illness. As far as the role of lithium in depression is concerned, lithium is effective against the depression which is seen in bipolar illness, but sometimes it might not be efficacious on its own. At that time, we can combine certain compounds with lithium, more prominent ones being lamotrigine, which has an efficacy as a antidepressant in bipolar depression, or very rarely you can combine it with antipsychotics like olanzapine. You can combine it with olanzapine in combination with fluoxetine. You can combine it with quetiapine. And the thing about these antipsychotics being combined with lithium in the depressive episode is that the dose of the antipsychotics would be in the lower dose range as compared to the doses of these antipsychotics when they are used for the treatment of conditions like schizophrenia. Now, as far as the other antidepressants are concerned, for example, you have the tricyclic antidepressants, you have the serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. It has been observed that if you give these antidepressants in the depression seen in bipolar illness, they have a tendency of switching, bringing about a switch from depression to mania. Now, if you use the SSRIs, generally the efficacy of SSRIs in bipolar depression is poor as compared to their efficacy in major unipolar depression. But the SSRIs generally have a lesser propensity of causing a switch from depression to mania. Even atypical antidepressant like bupropion may have some efficacy in patients with bipolar depression, but even bupropion has a tendency to induce a switch from depression to mania. So this was the role of lithium in its use for bipolar depression. Now coming to the other conditions where lithium may be used. Lithium can be used in certain schizophrenic patients not responding to normal antipsychotics. You can give lithium in the lower dose range compared to the use of lithium in bipolar disease, where it may have a adjunctive role use in schizophrenia, may have a adjunctive role in certain disorders which are known as the schizoaffective disorders, which have symptoms which are similar to schizophrenia, plus there might be a excitatory component or a depressed component in this schizoaffective disorders, where lithium may be given as a adjunct to antipsychotics for these disorders. Then also in certain patients who are suffering from very severe repeated cycles of unipolar depression, where you have very good drugs like tricyclics, the SSRIs, the SNRIs, and you have the atypical antidepressants. In some of these patients of depression also, lithium may be given as an adjunct to antidepressants in case of unipolar depression also, which would be the use of lithium in much lower doses. Then if you remember the mechanism of action of lithium, I had told you that there is some component of lithium where lithium has a neuroprotective effect, where lithium promotes neuroplasticity. So because of these two features in the action of lithium, sometimes lithium has been tried for certain neurodegenerative conditions, maybe spinal cord injury, certain conditions associated with apoptosis, Alzheimer's disease, Huntington's disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. So these are certain neurodegenerative conditions where lithium may be given as an adjunct to other first line drugs used for these conditions, where because of by promoting the neuroprotective action and by promoting neuroplasticity, lithium may be believed to have a role in these conditions. So this was about the different clinical uses of lithium. Okay, coming to the other compounds which are mood stabilizers, I will not discuss these compounds in details. You've already studied them as anticonvulsant agents. I will only discuss their role as far as their use in bipolar illness is concerned. If you remember sodium valproate, in the mechanism of action I had mentioned, similar to lithium, it reduces the inositol levels. It has an inhibitory effect similar to lithium on protein kinase C, where it may promote a decrease in the release of neurotransmitters. plus it has an inhibitory effect on glycogen synthase kinase 3 betas, which was also similar to the mechanism of action of lithium. Now the irony is that even though lithium was supposed to be the most effective mood stabilizer, currently in countries like US it has been seen that sodium valproate has replaced lithium in its use as a mood stabilizer, where a much greater number of patients are receiving sodium valproate rather than lithium as a mood stabilizer. Now there are certain advantages of sodium valproate over lithium which may be responsible for this. Number one, the onset of action of sodium valproate is much faster as compared to lithium. This is one advantage of sodium valproate. And the second is the tolerability of sodium valproate is also much better as compared to lithium. So these are the two advantages which sodium valproate has over lithium. But the major disadvantage of sodium valproate over lithium is that sodium valproate is efficacious in the manic phase, it is efficacious for prophylaxis, but sodium valproate is not efficacious for bipolar depression, whereas lithium is effective for bipolar depression. So there are two things. If the patient is not responding well to lithium, you may replace lithium with sodium valproate, or if the patient in patients not responding well to sodium valproate, you may combine lithium with valproate, or you may combine valproate with lithium if the patients are not responding well to lithium. So both may be given individually as monotherapy. This is important. Both may be given individually as monotherapy, or both may be given in combination as mood stabilizers for maintenance of patients of bipolar illness. Okay, so combination of lithium and valproate may succeed in cases resistant to monotherapy, and they may be given in combination with atypical antipsychotics in acute mania. As far as the adverse effects of sodium valproate are concerned, as you can see in this slide, there are certain effects which are similar to lithium. One is the GI symptoms. So GI symptoms is not similar to lithium, but one thing which I would like to point out here, there is a dosage form or a salt of valproate which is known as Divalproex. You might have heard of this term Divalproex when you studied anticonvulsants. This Divalproex has got a much better gastric tolerance as compared to valproate. So generally if valproate is used, it is given in the form of Divalproex for a better GI tolerance. Okay, the features which I was talking about, features which are in common with lithium, you have weight gain, they are marked in red. You have weight gain, you have sedation, you have tremors, and you have transient alopecia. This is what is common in the adverse effects between lithium and sodium valproate. With lithium you had leukocytosis, whereas with valproate you have neutropenia and thrombocytopenia. Sometimes you may have polycystic ovaries also. So these are the common adverse effects which are observed with sodium valproate. As far as efficacy is concerned, the efficacy of sodium valproate, studies are showing that the efficacy of sodium valproate as a mood stabilizer is equivalent to the efficacy of lithium as a mood stabilizer, except for the fact that it is not so effective in depression, where lithium is effective in depression. But efficacy in mania is believed to be the same. Okay. Coming to the next compound, which is lamotrigine. Lamotrigine is also an anticonvulsant similar to valproate, and lamotrigine is a relatively newer anticonvulsant where it was found to also have an action of maintaining euthymia in a patient with bipolar disorder, and it was believed to have an efficacy in bipolar depression. But one very prominent difference between lamotrigine and valproate and lamotrigine and lithium is that it is not effective in the manic phase. So it is basically effective for prophylaxis of recurrent attacks of depression. And if you remember my last class, another thing I want to highlight here, lithium tends to lower the mood from up to the baseline, whereas lamotrigine raises the mood from below to the baseline. So that is what is seen with lamotrigine. And lamotrigine is used for maintenance of type 2 bipolar disorder. If you remember, in type 2 bipolar disorder, the patients are characterized with hypomania and not mania. So the chances of switching a patient from depression to mania is less in patients with bipolar 2 disorder as compared to patients with bipolar 1 disorder. So lamotrigine as such is preferable in patients with bipolar 2 disorder as compared to patients with bipolar 1 disorder. Now, a very important adverse effect, though lamotrigine is supposed to be a very well tolerated drug, but it has a very important adverse effect, which is that it produces a very severe form of a skin reaction, and this is so severe that it could be fatal. One is known as the Stevens-Johnson syndrome. I'm sure you must have heard this name of Stevens-Johnson syndrome earlier in pharmacology. Then it can produce TEN. The full form of TEN is toxic epidermal necrolysis, which is associated with extensive blistering of the skin and the detachment of the epidermis from the dermis, and which can be fatal because very vast areas of the skin are involved. As much as more than 70 or more than 80% of the skin may be involved, so it can be fatal, and there are very severe forms of hypersensitivity reactions which can take place with lamotrigine. Now generally they are not seen, but it is said that there are certain things which may predispose to these adverse effects. One is the increased risk of these serious skin reactions can take place if lamotrigine is combined with valproate, if the initial doses are higher than the recommended doses, and if the dose escalation or the dose increase is done very rapidly with the use of lamotrigine, then the chances of this adverse effect happening is increased. So this was what was special about lamotrigine in relation to its use as a mood stabilizer. Okay, then you have another anticonvulsant which is known as carbamazepine. Carbamazepine, the special things I'll say first. Number one, it has a greater efficacy in acute mania and in prophylaxis as compared to the depression which is seen in bipolar illness. As far as its efficacy is concerned, the efficacy of carbamazepine is poorer. I would like to stress again, the efficacy of carbamazepine is poorer or less as compared to the other mood stabilizers like lithium and valproate. Okay, so lithium and valproate may be given as monotherapy, but carbamazepine is not recommended as monotherapy. It is mostly combined with lithium or may very rarely be combined with valproate. It is never given alone. So it is effective for acute mania, may be given for mixed episodes. Mixed episodes means when the patient shows both mania and depression together in the same day or in the same week. In case of bipolar 1, mixed episodes are generally poor in response to lithium. In patients who are rapid cyclers, if you remember, I had said that those patients who have 4 major cycles of mania or more than 4 or as much as 4 major cycles of depression in a year are said to be rapid cyclers. So carbamazepine may have a role in rapid cyclers, and rapid cyclers generally have a much poorer prognosis, and rapid cyclers generally respond much poorer to therapy as compared to other patients with bipolar illness. Okay, as far as the adverse effects of carbamazepine are concerned, there are certain adverse effects which are common. For example, weight gain and sedation is commonly seen with this valproate as well as lithium. With carbamazepine, another point in difference from valproate is, and For acute mania especially, the onset of action of carbamazepine is slower as compared to valproate, and you have to slowly build up the dose of carbamazepine as compared to valproate. So that is one reason why carbamazepine for acute mania would require a combination with other drugs. Plus, if you give very high doses of carbamazepine from the beginning, then neurotoxicity and blood dyscrasias are prominent adverse effects of carbamazepine which the patient will be predisposed to. So these are the adverse effects: weight gain, neurotoxicity, diplopia, sedation, blurred vision, vertigo, elevation in liver enzymes, then blood dyscrasias like agranulocytosis. Then you discontinue if the patient has symptoms like fever, sore throat, that is a sign of agranulocytosis, rash, mouth ulcers, and if there is easy bruising. So carbamazepine is poor in efficacy but is maybe given in the form of adjunctive therapy if the patient is not responding well to a combination of lithium and valproate. Okay. Now just a note, or I would like to mention, you have studied these drugs as antipsychotics and you have studied these drugs as anticonvulsants. These are the other drugs for bipolar disease. Among the anticonvulsants, you have oxcarbazepine and topiramate. Okay, oxcarbazepine and topiramate. Topiramate especially is a newer anticonvulsant. For as mood stabilizers, there are certain studies which have been done where they have been tested as mood stabilizers, but they have not received FDA approval for their mood stabilizing action, and they are less used than the other anticonvulsants like carbamazepine, lamotrigine and valproate. Then among the antipsychotics, as I've already mentioned earlier, olanzapine, aripiprazole, risperidone, ziprasidone, quetiapine, they have been used. They have FDA approval for this. For acute mania, for mixed episodes, where quetiapine is and lurasidone. Quetiapine, lurasidone are mainly for bipolar depression, and also a combination of olanzapine and fluoxetine for bipolar depression. But you remember that when antipsychotics are used in bipolar disease, the doses of these drugs is in the lower range as compared to the use of these drugs for conditions like schizophrenia. Okay, antidepressants, I've already said earlier that tricyclic antidepressants, the SNRIs, bupropion, they are not really effective long term because they tend to bring about a switch from depression to mania. May be effective short term, but because of the switch, they are generally not preferred. And when they are given, antidepressants are never given alone. They are always given in combination with mood stabilizers. So they are always given as adjuncts. Okay, with benzodiazepines form a part of therapy of patients with bipolar illness, both in the manic phase, in the prophylactic phase, as well as in the depressed phase, because in the manic phase, the sedation is required. In the depressed phase, because depression is very commonly associated with anxiety, so anti-anxiety action is required. Plus in the manic phase, the agitation is also reduced with the use of benzodiazepines. The insomnia which is there in the manic phase is also taken care of with the use of benzodiazepines. So because of these multiple actions of benzodiazepines, they form a very important component of adjunctive therapy in patients with bipolar illness. Though generally the guidelines are that the benzodiazepines should be given for a short period of time, but in actual practice these benzodiazepines may be given throughout life in the treatment of patients with bipolar illness. Okay, this is generally how you start with treating in the acute manic or the mixed episode. You try and stabilize the patient on lithium or valproate or antipsychotic, but if it is antipsychotic, it is mostly combined with lithium or valproate. So that is the first step, where you can try and control with a single drug, but if the response is not adequate, generally you give a combination where you can combine the lithium or valproate with an antipsychotic. If the response is still not adequate, you combine a benzodiazepine. If the response is still not adequate, then you can have two anticonvulsants, which means that with valproate you can combine valproate with lamotrigine, or you can combine valproate with carbamazepine. So that way you have lithium, two anticonvulsants and an antipsychotic. If the response is still not adequate, then maybe electroconvulsive therapy, and very rarely clozapine may be added for refractory illness. Similarly, for a depressive episode, you try and stabilize with lithium or lamotrigine. They alone may not be sufficient, so then you can combine either of them with valproate or carbamazepine. Okay, simultaneously you can combine atypical antipsychotic, for example olanzapine with fluoxetine, quetiapine. They may be tried. Alternative anticonvulsants may be tried. So you can choose from anticonvulsants like lamotrigine, carbamazepine, oxcarbazepine. That can be done. And along with this, benzodiazepines, as I mentioned earlier, are important adjuncts both in mania as well as depression. And lorazepam is the common benzodiazepine which is generally recommended. And lorazepam is special that it takes care of catatonia, which means an abnormal still posture, which may be seen in patients with depression, which may be there in these patients. So this briefly covers your drugs pertaining to and the pharmacotherapy of bipolar illness. Thank you so much for your patient hearing.